I spent $1,300 publishing my first poetry book. And what I've noticed across different types of content talking about publishing a book is they only focus on the nitty gritty on how to publish a book. There aren't much content out there on how to market it and sell the book itself. A lot of the times of what I see is people focus on social media by itself, and it may not be the best option for everyone, especially if you don't have a following. It feels that a lot of authors are beholden to focusing on solely social media when there are other opportunities to help you while you're building that following as well. So I just wanted to share my process on what I did when it comes to social media as well as outbound outreach to be able to sell my book by itself. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first thing is I want to state again that I spent $1,300 publishing my first Halloween poetry book. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details of everything that I purchased, but I would say that a majority of the cost went into a cover design. Again, I wrote a Halloween poetry book. It is a very niche type of book. What I've noticed is a lot of people don't read poetry. It is not the most marketable book when it comes to the specific genre that I chose. But for me, this was more of a personal project, so I was fine with the consequences of the choice that I have made for that decision. However, I wanted to find ways to mitigate that cost. So that's why I spent a lot of money on the cover design, because I wanted it to be very Halloween aesthetic focused. So then I could play into a market of people who enjoy the nostalgia of Halloween and not necessarily enjoy poetry, but they do like the aesthetics of Halloween itself. And I know that a lot of people buy books for the cover solely. So I wanted to also tap into that market. So here is a overview. I published my book in September. So here is a month-to-month overview of the costs that I made. I first published my book in September 2024. And I had a viral launch on LinkedIn where I published my book and I announced my book to everyone so that they could purchase it. And on KDP, I made $57.39. In October, created a 50% discount on KDP, which is Amazon, and I made $17.55. I am a part of a group called SDL Girl Network. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and it is just an event where women can interact with each other, and it's more community focused. It's not really anything with my business. However, I did know the people in charge. They have around 26,000 people in the Facebook group community. One of the people who ran the group wanted me to do a book signing at one of their events. So I was able to do a book signing at one of their book club events, and I made $66.87. And the last thing I did, because it was Halloween focused, I decided to create my own poetry reading and book signing event. And I held this at an indie bookstore. And I had this at a indie bookstore. And I made $37.55. So I excluded November and December because I didn't really make that much money. It was a slow month. I didn't put any effort into making any sales, so I didn't really make any money during those 2 months. But in January, I decided to do a couple of different things. So from October, I realized that I did make a lot of events from in-person events. So I wanted to hone in on that, and I decided to do consignment with two local indie bookstores. And I made $7.79 for both. I made $8.25 on KDP. This was the time where I wanted to start on Substack. I did a 30-day daily posting challenge about my author's journey on Substack during the month of January. I got 12 subscribers and 579 views on Substack. And I just realized why I started Substack was I knew that a lot of people, there was a subscription model that you could pay like five to $10 a month for anything that you offer. And I was like, maybe I could use that as income resources. However, I realized after doing a 30-day daily challenge that Substack is also a slow growth platform and it just wasn't sustainable. And I realized shortly that you need to give a lot up front for people to want to pay for your services or pay to learn about your author journey when there's so much free content already out there. So I realized that I couldn't do the daily posting on Substack, and I adjusted it to 4 posts a week. So from February to March of 2025, February, I didn't make that much money. March, I made money on KDP, which is $17.87. And then I also had an event. It was a networking event where I had a vendor booth. I paid for a vendor booth, and I also sold my books on the side, which I made $54.97. This was also the time where I started a TikTok and Instagram account. I was posting daily quotes from the poetry book itself. The day that I published to now, I think I realized that social media is long term, which I've always knew. However, when it comes to events, I did make some amount of money, and being able to get immediate money out is also as important when you're wanting to market a book. Outbound was also important for me and impactful for the cost of the book itself. And I think that this is important to note because there are a lot of articles saying that book sales are hard to get when you're doing book signings because a lot of people don't show up to book signings if they don't know you as a person. That is a valid statement to have. However, it does not necessarily mean that if you host a book signing that no one is going to buy your book. I think it's more if you have to weigh out your options. I think I realized regardless of what people say on what you should be doing, you still have to test out these ideas. And only until you test out these ideas, then you will know whether or not it works for your business. So for the content strategy itself, I realized in December that I had to be more efficient with my time. And I went to Canva to create quote graphics because when I was looking at other competitors, a lot of them were sharing their quotes. I just wanted to focus on what people are currently doing, and let me start with that first to market this book. So I went to Canva to create quote graphics. I used AI to pull quotes from each poem, and I batch created an entire year's worth of quotes from my poetry book. And then I started posting consistently across different platforms. So every single day, I would just post a quote from my poetry book on Instagram, TikTok, and then eventually I started into posting consistently onto Pinterest. So from March to May, I became more consistent on social media during this time. On TikTok, I got around 13,000 views. On TikTok, I was able to get 13,000 views, and most of it, from what I've seen, was from the For You page. The For You page was recommending my videos, and therefore that was driving most of the views. On Instagram, I got 4,645 views. From what I've seen in the statistics, majority of the views came from me creating reels because it was recommending me to non-followers compared to my followers, and that was generating the most amount of growth. And then on Pinterest, I used the same quote graphics that I used on TikTok and Instagram, and I got around 545 impressions. And in April to May, it increased 140 more impressions. So here are the conclusions. So from all the platforms that I chose, TikTok, Pinterest, Instagram, as well as me just posting on LinkedIn itself, I realized that TikTok gave me the most growth and more people were able to view the content. However, LinkedIn made the most sales. I think that people get tripped up on the views. However, a lot of the platforms that I'm using right now aren't generating sales at the moment. I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm just going to focus and put my priority maybe more into LinkedIn. Like, it's a lot easier to get more money from outbound events compared to going on social media if you haven't built a loyal following. As of right now, the total amount of money I have made from September to now is $302.73. I still need to make $997.27 to break even. I know that I still have a long way to go when it comes to making money on this poetry book or even breaking even. Like, I definitely don't regret creating a poetry, even though it is often seen that it is not a marketable book itself because of the genre. Creating a poetry book may be hard to sell, especially when you see the statistics of how many people purchase poetry books over other genres. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to sell. I think you just have to be more smart on where you put your energy into it. From now on, I'm probably going to focus more my time on LinkedIn. I'm not going to back down on any of the other things that I've done. But let me know if you ever want a follow up on a breakdown of what I did in the upcoming year. And let me know in the comments what other types of content you would like to see from me.